one. Remember the clicker. Thank you very much. So my name is Laura Bonapace. I'm the Associate Director of Advancement in Marketing here at the American School, nice big title. My background is in graphic design, and I've been involved in the greater design field, applying my skills for over 30 years. Yes, you can calculate my age. Yeah, you see this title here. It's not about you, so don't get offended by that. So you may be asking yourself, okay, what's the difference between school and work? And it's basically, I mean, it's an oversimplification, but it's the difference between intake and output. When we're in school, we're spending many, many years, not just at AISD, but in college as well. We're receiving knowledge and we're building our skills. And when we switch over to the workforce, now we have to contribute all that knowledge and skill that we've been building up for many more years. And guess what? You're actually a machine. See where it says you, between those great big gears? Yeah, that's you. It was also me, and sometimes I still think it's me. So, but anyway, so one thing that's really important in an organization is to find out the history of it. Now, I'm not going to read these. What is the history of an organization? Well, normally we think of just a timeline, but it's more than a timeline. It's also the environment in which that company was formed. And when we think about new companies today, I just read an article that said there's like something like 30 companies that are worth more than $1 billion, that these companies didn't even exist 10 years ago. You think, oh, there's no history in that. And you combine that with your enthusiasm for starting your career. Again, you may think, well, what's history? But history does exist. And especially when you put the company and the organization in context. When you have a sense of the context, then you understand the long-term connections. You understand what the mission and the values are of that company. Now, by extension, you need to find out the context of your job. When you have that in context, then you understand how you will contribute meaningfully to the organization. Like a big part of what I do, a major part of what I do, is the communications and the graphics for the schools, for the school. So I've just recently finished some quotations for the high school. Now I have to think of how my job is going to fit in context with the facilities department. And so before I even start a job that requires anything going up on the walls, I have to check with facilities and make sure that I'm going to conform to their standards. What's very important is to understand what your job is and isn't. You may be very enthusiastic and think, oh, I want to contribute to this, and I want to do blah, blah, blah. But you might actually make things worse, because somebody else will say, well, no, wait a minute, I have this, this is my job. And by you getting involved in somebody else's job, you may just cause that other person problems, because they're like, well, you don't understand what my job is. And that's very important. Using the facilities, for example. Like facilities, they know what we need to make sure we're meeting fire safety standards, and we're not blocking the doorways, and et cetera. It's a lot of technical information I need to be aware of. What's extremely important is when you start working is having a good relation with your HR department. Your HR department will have a manual for do's and don'ts, protocol, and things that you need to know to work with your colleagues. This is extremely important, especially now when we have social media. There's going to be a lot of guidelines for what you can and cannot do with social media. Because, like this recording right now is going to be over on the internet, everybody's going to see it, you can't take it back down. So years ago, you said something, nobody really cared about that. Now it's out there permanent, and you're kind of stuck. So that's very, very important. Make sure you keep in touch with your HR department, know what the company's protocols are. If you don't know what your job is, and other people's jobs are, you can also consult with your HR department. They have a tremendous amount to contribute. Now, that's the company. There you are again. You have colleagues you have to work with. Just like in school, you have your classmates. The difference is that in a work environment, you're going to be working with people who have vastly different experiences and many different years of experience. Like, 10th graders are not associating with first graders, right? You have no connection, but you may be in a company, you may be new, but the person sitting next to you may have 10 years experience. So you need to learn how to work with that person. And when everything's working well, it's great. Like if you have siblings and you're getting along, that's great. But if you get into a fight with your brother and sister, hey, that's a whole different story, right? How are you going to resolve that? So You're not going to get along with everybody, or I shouldn't say not going to get along. You may have, like, personality differences with your colleagues. And, don't let this freak you out or upset you or think, oh, I can't deal with this person. You can certainly find common ground. And the best way to do it is not make things personal in an office. Maybe somebody has a personality that may be very, like, a little snarky when you're working with you. Well, if you're having a hard time working with that person, find out what the company's policy is within the conflict. The best thing is just to, before you even get anybody else involved, just sit down with that person and say, hey, you may not realize it, but did you really mean it that way when you said this to me? Because I was a little offended by that. And usually you can work out something. And, and remember, they're just trying to do their job as well. So you do your job, they do their job, and you'll be fine. Before you contribute in a meeting, make sure you're prepared. The best thing is, if you don't know what to say, just don't say anything. Really find out as much as you can about the job that you're working on. And then you don't want to go into a meeting and just start saying things randomly and then people look at you and you don't even know what you're talking about. Always be prepared in meetings. Like I said, if you're not prepared, then just don't say anything. Your colleagues will definitely help you. Have a good relationship with them. Reach out to them and say, look, I really don't understand this. Don't be afraid to say you don't understand. Because they may have a different system. You're used to one system, they have a different system. Even for myself, when I've worked in different companies, they have different systems for different ways of doing the same thing. So I have to learn their language, the verbiage that they use. And you're better off saying, I don't understand, than trying to bluff and say, you do understand. Because remember, you're getting paid for this. That's the difference. In school, you're paying the school. Now, people are paying you, so you're being buttoned up. When dealing with colleagues, remember it's about the task and not the job. I mean, when you're a mom like me, they do these books about how to raise your children. The first thing they say is, if your 3-year-old toddler, breaks something, don't tell your child, oh, you're bad. Because the child's not bad. They just did a bad thing. Same thing at work. Your colleague may have messed up, but that doesn't make them a bad person. And just say to them, look, okay, this was a mistake, this wasn't right, let's move on with that. And I have that often with vendors. I'll send out a job, it comes back wrong, and then I'll just explain to them, look, this is where you went wrong. And I never make it about the person. Because everybody can make mistakes. And don't be vindictive in an office. I mean, sometimes you can like somebody, but that's okay. I mean, just don't compromise their work. Even if somebody is very difficult or for whatever reason. Because at the end of the day, you all are going to have to work together. And if there's a major problem, and your supervisor wants to find out who did what, if they find out that you didn't do your job because you wanted to get back at this person, that's stuff for the sandbox. Again, when you're like 3 years old, that doesn't work in an office. Just you do your job, you do the best you can, and don't try and compromise somebody else. Because remember, you're going to need help too. There are times when you're going to make a mistake. I need to know that your colleagues are going to be there to support you and to help you get through and to learn from them. Oh, I didn't have this up. Sorry about that. Okay. So, what's the good news? This is a picture of a new star being formed, a supernova. So the good news is, as a newbie, you don't have the responsibilities of your senior colleagues, which is great. So there's a lot of pressure that's off you. Often in your first job, you'll be given a lot of front work to do, big photocopiers or something like that. But and while that may be aggravating, there's actually a lot to learn from the details. My daughter had an internship last year, and she was doing a lot of research. But just by observing and just observing what's happening and doing this research, she got to learn a tremendous amount. And when people, it may seem like ridiculous that aren't well, but even for myself, when I'm looking for somebody to work with me, I want to know, like, can you just, do that little thing really well? Because I know it's a cliche when we talk about, when we make an analogy between a relay race and work or things in life, but it really is true because, if I'm working with you, I need you to do this exactly a certain way. So I know what I'm doing, that I'm passing over to the next person. Nowhere is that more true than in an office. So don't worry about the grunt work, do it well. And you've gone through all these great schools and you're really excited and you want to get through life, but don't be in such a rush. Enjoy your first few jobs and your first few years working. Take your time, learn as much as possible. because you have your whole life ahead of you. There's no need to rush through everything. And the biggest thing to take away is your contributions in the company plus your positive relations with them will equal success. And I use the word contributions because that's what you're doing in the company. You're adding to the whole process, like I said before about the history of the company. You're part of that history. Everything you're doing now is going to be brought forward. And even when we think about companies like Facebook, going back to the history of them, we're thinking that, oh, well, we all know what Facebook is now, we don't really, we need to know its history. But think about it, you're at this point. Now, 20 years from now, if you're working from Facebook, whatever you're doing now is going to be part of that. So always think about whatever you're doing, that make sure that you're thinking of the big picture, and think about how you're going to bring the past in with the future. And like when I came for the rehearsal the other day, I was really impressed. Your first reaction is, okay, where's the adult? The adult's in charge, right? For the grown-up, right? I didn't see anybody. It's like the students were completely running this. So from what I see, even just from working here and from engaging with you, you already possess so many of the skills that you'll need for success. The way you all do work together already. The way you do put your personal differences aside. So you're already extremely well prepared for the future. So I think you'll be fine. What do you think?